Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Coffin Talk Interviews with the Living, a weekly podcast that explores how our views on death affect the way we live our life. This week is another friend of mine. Her name is Laura Roser, and she's awesome. She's written one and a half, maybe two, maybe three fiction novels. I have read one of them front to back in like 3 days, and I tell her in the middle of the interview it is my favorite novel I read last year. And I read a lot. I read like 40 to 100 books a year if you include a job I have where I get paid to read. So, but for pleasure, I read at least 40 books a year, and hers was definitely the best book. So it's not out yet, but her other book, which I've also read, which is nonfiction, is available, and there'll be notes for how to find all that. But I just wanted to preface this with this discussion goes into so many areas that I wanted to explore more. I definitely could have done an hour on each category that we talk about, but we talk about her experience growing up Mormon in Salt Lake City, Utah. We talk about her experience dealing with an indictment from the Department of Justice and the Securities and Exchange Commission. We talk about meaningful legacies and the the niche environment that she's explored and become an expert in, and so how she gives advice for how to leave a meaningful legacy and lead a meaningful life. And we also just get into the intangibles of like friendship and dealing with life and all that. And she has some great advice in the middle of it. And yeah, she's just through and through one of the coolest people I've known. I feel so lucky to have this community of writers that I've met. And what I like the most about it is none of us are doing the same projects and none of us are doing the same things. So you'll see when you see Laura and you see the magic in her eyes as she talks and relates stories. And there's also a moment where we're talking about her son and then you hear him scream in the background. And it's probably my favorite part of the interview just because I have little kids and it was such perfect timing. I don't know how he knew to do that. But anyway, Laura's awesome. You're definitely going to enjoy this interview. This is a great interview and I'm really proud of it. And I'm so thankful for her coming on. So here's the interview. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Coffin Talk Interviews with the Living, a weekly podcast that explores how our views on death affect the way we live our life. And this week, our guest is Laura Roser. She's a friend of mine, but she's also a pretty fantastic, amazing author. So I'm going to try to withhold my celebrity feeling as I talk to her and I read her bio, which is incredible. And I would also like to preface this with I have read multiple books by her, including the nonfiction one I'm about to cite. And so it's not just me saying she's an incredible writer. I actually know firsthand. But anyway, she has authored the #1 bestseller on Amazon, Your Meaning Legacy, How to Cultivate and Pass on Non-Financial Assets. That's the book I read, one of the books. And she's the leading expert in meaning legacy planning, a topic we're definitely going to discuss today. She's also the founder and CEO of Paragon Road, a company that specializes in passing on non-financial assets, such as your values, wisdom, and beliefs. She's interviewed many top CEOs, high net worth individuals, spiritual leaders, philosophers, financial professionals, family experts, celebrities, philanthropists, and other innovators in her quest to uncover how to craft a more meaningful life experience. And she has also keynoted for several organizations, including Georgetown University, Advisors in Philanthropy, and the Seattle Foundation. There will be plenty of ways to find her and her books in the notes section, but obviously you can just head to her website, which has it all, which is lauraroser.com. But I don't want to delay the question and answer process of the interview any further. So without further delays, hello, Laura, and welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks, Mike, and thanks for the amazing intro. I am a huge fan and friend and excited to be on.
Yeah, no, it's been awesome trying to slowly get every single one of my author friends onto the show. And so thank you for coming on. I know that your time is about as busy as mine because we both have young children and it's a lot. So thank you also for making time on a weekday. Um, let's start with meaning legacy. I don't know if you like invented the idea of legacy planning or if you just came into it like pretty early on, but you are an expert in it. So how would you define it for most of our audience members who have probably never heard of those terms?
I think, yeah, so legacy planning is interesting. There's a definite industry around it. And the way I first heard about it or came into it is I was meeting with this financial advisor and, just talking about the typical stuff, right? But anyway, he said, we have a process to help you pass on your values to your kids, to your heirs. And I said, oh, that's really interesting. So I went to meet with him, and he basically put a worksheet in front of me and said, you can fill out your values here, and then we'll help you create a whole life insurance policy to pass these values on to your kids. And I was like, okay, but what about this process of passing on the actual values? And he said, well, this is basically all we really have. Um, and so I started thinking about it and thinking, well, if I was actually going to pass on my values to my children or to my heirs, how would I go about doing that? And so that kind of led me on this quest to figure out, first of all, what legacy was, and then also how you actually package up a legacy and make it something physical and tangible that you can pass on. And I have this background in, marketing, graphic arts. For a lot of years, I ran a marketing company, kind of like a full service agency. So, helping companies with branding, and I mean, everything from writing, reports and doing websites to doing massive campaigns like ad campaigns and that sort of thing. So anyway, so with that background, I kind of said, how would we actually package up a legacy? And so I kind of looked at it from that point of view. And there are, I think, I termed it a meaning legacy, which is sort of this tangible thing that you pass on. And there's different versions, I guess, of it. So there's definitely people that help you pass on your stories and, sort of your family history, let's say. And then there's people like in the more of the financial industry that are more focused on like how you pass on sort of family values, but it's like really controlled in a way that they want it to be packaged up with their estate plan.
Yeah.
And so I ran into all these different kinds of people. And then of course there's all different kinds of ways of looking at legacy. I mean, there's the spiritual side of it. There's your impact on the community. There's your philanthropic impact. And so I just started investigating all of it. And so that's kind of what led to the book. And for a lot of years, it's not active right now. You can see all the issues, the past issues online. But I had this magazine as well, where we interviewed people about their legacies and what they found meaningful, and what they wanted to pass on. So anyway, so that's basically the premise of a meaning legacy, is that tangible thing that you want to pass on to your kids that talks about your wisdom, your values, your stories, that can really make an impact on them. And it's not just the money, because when people think about what they're going to pass on, a lot of the times it's just, whatever it is, it's the tangibles, right? It's their car, their house, their bank accounts.
Yeah.
But this adds something more, and it adds a lot more meaning.
Yeah, I remember like an uncomfortable conversation when I was 19 in the car with my parents, and they were telling me all about like the estate and like they just met with someone and all that, and I was like, I don't care. I just want you to live forever. Like, don't talk about this in front of me. Don't tell, and they were like so proud that they had like set something up and gone through all these, like conversations. And it's just so funny because I think all kids really want from their parents is exactly what you just described, which is like their parent, or if their parent can no longer be around, at the very least, like the values, like the things, that they want to instill. Was this something you were like obsessed with from an early age, or was it more like as you started to think about having children and then actually having children that it became more prominent in your life?
It's something that my family has kind of done. Not my parents, weirdly enough, but like my grandparents,
Uh-huh.
were very into sort of genealogy,
Oh, cool.
and that I guess that family history side of things. And it's a typical thing. I grew up in Utah in the LDS faith, and so it's very typical, I guess, of Mormons to kind of want to track that that family history.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of had an introduction at a young age with that, but it wasn't really on my radar or really an obsession at all, until I kind of talked to this financial advisor. And then I went through some disasters in my personal life, where I guess my focus was more on the money side of things. and I don't know, I guess building up that side. But uh, I don't know, I guess I kind of had a moment where that all fell apart. It all, turned into a disaster. And I thought, well, what it actually matters at the end of all of this is not actually the money. I mean, it's important, it's important to have money to live and so on and so forth. But who you are as a person, what those decisions you make, at the end of the day, if you have all this money but you don't have values and principles, then you have nothing basically. And if you
Yeah.
don't have relationships and loving people that you can pass that on to, and basically a good legacy. And it's weird because legacy is a word that is kind of triggering for some people. Like some people think, oh, well, that's just like, it's just people that want to put their names on buildings and be recognized, sort of a thing. Or like, it's people that want to be really controlling with their estate plan, or, whatever it is. And so my view of it is a little more pure, like it's a little more, um, like the stories that people remember about you, the kind of relationship and connection that you have. And, um, I mean, passing that on. So yeah, so I kind of had a moment, and this was maybe 10 years ago, almost 15 years ago now, but where I just started looking at like what really does matter at the end of your life. Like, if just because I went through this crisis of sort of all these tangible things being stripped away. And it was like, well, what actually matters is your principles and your values and those stories and those relationships that you build throughout your life, and how you impact people as well.
Yeah. No, it's really cool. I think it's funny because I keep kind of smirking because I'm thinking about how it's not ironic that we're talking about tangible intangibles. Like it's like a weird like territory, and I can see how it's a niche, and I can see why you felt a need to explore it and become an expert in it, because it really is something weird. And it's also funny to me. It has never occurred to me that the word legacy would have a negative connotation. Like to me, it's only like positive. But yeah, I completely can understand that now that the way you phrase it and everything. But did oh, and just one more comment because uh the I went through a disaster, I had a crisis, and now I'm a much better person. It's not lost on me that that seems to be almost every good quality person in my life story. Like it's interesting that I think without those events, while we could be humble entering into our lives and into that point, like they do something profound for each of us. And like, so like, as I like to always say, you're making like abundant lemonade out of like those lemons, but now it's been, 10, 15 years and you're so far on the other side of it. Do you think when you're in the middle of a crisis, like as far as like giving advice to others, um, do you think it's helpful? Like, would it have been helpful to hear like a lot of people go through something like this, you'll come out better? Like how do you now in retrospect, like if it happened to your own child or it happened to a close friend, like how would you try to help them? And I'm not being
Um,
specific on purpose because it's just any crisis. It doesn't matter.
yeah,
Yeah.
if they went through a crisis, yeah, I mean, I think everyone kind of has to go through their journey. So I studied this a lot. I'm just sort of this analytical studying kind of person, and there's, I think that now there's a pretty big focus on sort of mental health, um, and I think that sometimes it gets a little too. I don't know. I feel like sometimes people can get stuck in sort of the victim role, especially if they go through a major crisis. And I feel like that's really important, to help people kind of get through, like, oh, this terrible things happen to you, but help them get through that, and see that that there will be, a better times. I mean, there's kind of all these cliche sorts of things you can say, this too shall pass, whatever else. Um, there's there's kind of this concept of, and I forgot who created it. Anyway, but there's the concept of PTSD, right? Post traumatic stress, but there's also a concept of post traumatic growth.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so, and I forgot who originally termed it, but basically, when you go through these experiences, there's actual gifts that you get from going through like very hard experiences, and you know, a lot of it can be personal growth, you know, like spiritual development, um, just feeling more centered, and like you can go through hard things feeling more of that sense of resiliency.
Hmm.
So I think, you know, I don't think it's like everything needs to be lemonade and like, oh, you know, look at the good side of this, because sometimes really bad things happen and they just suck. Um,
Yes.
but also, I think if you can kind of look at it like, what are these gifts that I'm getting from this? How am I, you know, able to look at my life from a different angle or a different way, or have more perspective? Like for me, I before my experience, I was very not very vulnerable, I guess. I was very sort of hardcore, didn't want to show my emotions much. Wanted to, you know, always appear competent, right? Like it was a very big thing to me to be that way. And it's interesting. I discovered, because it was a very public thing, and it was like all over the internet, and I couldn't really
Wow.
hide from it. So I had to put my story out there. Like I had to put it out there in my own words, and I had to be really vulnerable because it was a very, um, you know, just like difficult uh, thing. I mean, like I can tell you specifically what it was, so we're not, you know, talking
Totally up to
in
you.
but yeah, so basically what happened is, the feds came in, the SEC came in and shut down my business because of my my husband, who's now my ex-husband. He was mismanaging things, and it turned into just a complete disaster where, you know, I didn't know that he was doing all this. But so basically SEC came in, shut down my company. There were all of these articles online about how, you know, we were doing fraudulent things and it was a Ponzi scheme.
Wow.
And then it got a lot worse when the DOJ came in and they indicted me and my husband, and you know, and I was facing years in prison, and it was just, but it was very public too, because it was all these articles online, and you know, government briefs about it. And so I couldn't, like, it was my whole reputation. It was, you know, it was me as a person. And um, so sort of that, like trying to uphold that facade of being super confident and a super good person and all of that was just sort of went out the window. So um, I had to be really vulnerable, and I had to tell my story and get it out there. And I started really opening up to people a lot more than I ever had before. And I feel like there were a lot of gifts that came from that, where I developed way closer bonds with people, way more empathy, and way more understanding. And so I think that there are a lot of gifts that you can get from, you know, going through really difficult times. So yeah,
No,
and just to
that
tell you, it worked
yeah.
out for me. So
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
the indictment was originally, or was eventually, dismissed. And you know, for me, not my ex-husband, but anyway, so it all worked out, which was a good thing.
Yeah.
But it was a, you know, incredibly scary time. And I think when you're in the middle of it, I don't know, sometimes people just need someone to sit there with them and be there, and not really tell them things will get better,
Yeah.
in a way, you know, where, um, I don't know, where they're just at that moment where they just need someone to be with them and to not turn their back, and just to, you know, to be there to hold their hand. And then sometimes they need someone to say, you know what, you're dwelling on this too much, and you got to get to the other side, and you just got to, you know, uh, keep going. And so I think you just have to have a little bit of, I guess, intuition about that, and really try to look at it from the other person's point of view, but also try to help them get through it so that they don't get stuck, you know, in this
Yeah.
rut.
No, that was incredible. I didn't even know if this subject would come up, but
Yeah.
like I can't imagine anything more scary than indictment, Department of Justice, like SEC. Like to me, the SEC is like an organization that gets people like Bernie Madoff, not my friend
Right.
Laura Roser. Like, and it's surreal. And also, I should mention for our audience, you're happily remarried. You have a son. Everything really did
Yeah.
work out. I'm also, as my audience well knows, divorced and happily remarried. So it's another like thing we have in common. But gosh, I have so many questions from all that. And they're not too specific, but I guess
having been falsely accused of something once and not even knowing who was talking behind my back and who wasn't, and then finding out much later that everyone was and they were saying pretty disparaging things. My worst nightmare, and it's ironic because I post these on YouTube, is like just getting attention from strangers. I don't understand why I'm in a profession and I've been a musician that you have to be talked about negatively, it seems, to get success. So I'm kind of curious, like, how, like, do you have like immense, like, okay, let's use a real example. When the story breaks, P Diddy accused of blah 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 blah, I hear person accused and go, I'm not gonna say anything, like I'm just gonna butt out because I don't know. But then, like, as things march on, you find out, okay, P Diddy was definitely guilty of at least some of the things. He absconded the country, he was hiding, so how do you handle any like sort of like scandal or controversy? Like, do you hands off? Do you try to investigate? Like, does it trigger you?
Hi, everybody. This is Mike Oppenheim, the host of Coffin Talk, the show you're currently listening to, and I'm interrupting to ask you if you would mind doing me a favor and subscribing to my online publication called You Are Here on Substack. It features weekly essays. I also have fiction, and of course there are links to the podcast and all the bonus episodes. It's completely free, and I would love your support, so please head over to mikeyop.com, that's MIKEYOPP.com, and sign up today. Thank you. Bye.
I mean, it doesn't trigger me. I do know from like articles that were written about me. And this was just like, they were just taking stuff from the indictment or whatever, or talking. I don't even know who they were talking to, but I do know that a lot of them were false, like there were false statements, or they would really inflate things to make it, make us seem more sinister than we were, sort of a thing. And so I guess I just take everything with a grain of salt. But at the end of the day, there were some nefarious things that were going on. I mean, so I was kind of roped into it because I just married the wrong guy, and he, and I didn't, I just didn't realize like how bad. I didn't realize exactly what he was doing, and he kind of had. It was just a weird situation because he kind of had a history of deal, anyway, of the feds kind of coming after him that I didn't really know about it because it was kind of a little more under the radar. And so they had kind of been watching him for a while. So it kind of felt like it just came out of nowhere, really, because it was like, oh, we made like a business mistake, like from my point of view. But it seemed like a major overreaction, which it kind of was if it was like his first offense. Like you could almost be like, oh, it was just a mistake, which is kind of what he said, which it kind of seemed like it was. But then if you look at all his past behavior, it was, a lot more than that. Right. So, but anyway, the point being that I think that when stuff like that does come out, usually there's something, right? Like it usually doesn't come out of nowhere completely. So it may be, sometimes it does. I mean, sometimes it is completely false, and sometimes it's just blown out of proportion. But then, I don't know, like a lot of times it's not. And so, I mean, it's just really interesting. Like I've looked at this a lot. There's this guy named John Ronson. I always get his name backwards. But anyway, he wrote a book called So You've Been Publicly Shamed.
Oh, yeah.
And so he talks about like Monica Lewinsky. He talks about all these people that have been canceled. And like a lot of those things actually are pretty much like made up. Like a lot of them are just sort of, or they're like blown up to the point where it's kind of crazy that like people are going after these, poor people like people are going after them like a mob. So like definitely any kind of like canceling of people, I get very suspicious of.
Okay.
And I don't, I think there's probably like a side that we're not hearing.
Yeah.
And then, but things are a little more official, like court cases and things like that. I think there's probably something going on a lot of the times, but I don't know. I mean,
No,
there's another book too that's called 3 Felonies a Day that talks about how the average person commits 3 felonies a day.
Wow.
And you could literally get anyone, right? Like
Yeah.
you literally could, like if you were hell bent on, like if you were a prosecutor or whatever, I mean, you could, just because there's so many laws on the books and they're so vague.
Yeah.
So, that's not to create total paranoia. Usually that doesn't happen, but you know, I think that there are definitely times where it does. So
No, yeah, for
yeah.
sure. My friend works for the IRS, and he helped catch the Silk Road person, and he just told me, like, if they want to get you, they're gonna get you. It's like the IRS specifically, like they are
Yeah.
the
Yep.
one. Al Capone, it's all famous. But okay, awesome. For time reasons, I want to switch to another subject, so I don't really have a great segue. But you mentioned growing up in LDS and being Mormon. I I always like to tell people, because Mormons get talked about a lot. Speaking of gossip, speaking about disparaging comments, but I always try to tell people every single Mormon I've ever met, literally, is one of the nicest, kindest, most generous people I've ever met. Like I have zero examples of bad. Now obviously I've read about blah blah blahs and blah blah blah, but like on a person to person basis, and living here in Arizona, I've met like many now, because there seems to be so. I guess I'm assuming you're going to kind of answer three questions in one with the way I'm asking it, but what was it like growing up Mormon? Are you still practicing, and slash, if you are or not, how do you deal with people talking about it the way they sometimes do?
Um, so growing up Mormon, I was kind of in a bubble. I mean, like I was in Salt Lake City. Salt Lake's changed a lot. It's relatively liberal now. There's still definitely pockets around that are like, I mean, cities around Salt Lake, like
Yeah.
anyway, like Provo and things like that are like highly concentration of Mormons. But I think Salt Lake still has a high concentration. But anyway, there definitely has been a lot more new blood coming in. But I think like it just kind of was my reality. Like most people were Mormon that I was around. Most people I went to school with were. And so it wasn't that weird. I had some cousins that like they lived in Oregon and they were the only Mormons in their schools, right? And
Wow.
so that was really weird for them because that was more their experience. Like they were talked about a lot and looked at as being super strange. And for me, it was sort of like I was in this community that there were a lot of good things, but then there were all like a lot of weird things too. So like, it could be highly judgmental. You could have, I don't know, like Mormon culture is really interesting, especially in Salt Lake, because uh, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, there can be some, just really just weird, like, oh, she unbuttoned the second button on her shirt
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
just like scandalous or, things like that,
That's funny.
which is pretty funny. But yeah, I think that for the most part it's very, very genuine. The people are very genuine. It's a really good community. I haven't practiced in a long time. My family or my parents are still LDS. And my sister just passed away relatively recently, but the amount of support that the Mormon Church has provided has been like I just almost can't even believe it. Like the members, I mean, I just like I cannot believe just the how they've really helped. They've I mean, I don't know. I was on with the bishop, like talking to him, like he was helping me
Wow.
organize the funeral and everything. And he was, and then there were multiple members and they were coming to visit my parents, like daily, making sure they were okay. And they were bringing them food and bringing them,
Mhm.
all kinds of things. And they're still, I mean, it's been months later, but they're still checking in and still, making sure. And so it kind of makes me want to be Mormon again.
Yeah. Yeah.
but,
No, totally.
but yeah, so I mean, I don't know. I don't.
So I
Yeah,
guess
I.
I
Sorry,
think
go ahead.
no, I think just to be more direct, if you hear someone say something like, "Oh, well, Mormons, they're blah blah blah," do you feel like a need to interject and to like defend it, or do you just kind of like let it go? Like how does that side of life for you, having left Salt
Um,
Lake City?
yeah, so I don't know. I kind of don't really care that much. I mean, like I've heard people say like, "Oh, Mormonism is a cult," especially it seems like that's usually if they are super religious themselves, but like a different kind of Christian religion. Which I think you find a lot in religions. Like the more similar they are, the more likely they are to sort of, cast
Wow.
stones,
Yeah,
I
totally.
guess.
Yeah.
But so and that kind of tweaks me a little bit. Sometimes it's kind of like, well, it's a younger religion. If you go back so many years with, like the founding of pretty much any other religion, you'll find a lot of weird stuff too,
Yeah.
And so yeah,
No,
so I don't
yeah.
know.
That's a good answer, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and it's in I really wanted to ask you like on camera because I feel defensive. Like even I'm saying even, which already shows my bias, even with Scientology, I'll like be like, "Hey, like how is that fair? Like why are you?" And it's always religious people or extreme atheists, which to me is a religion. So,
Yeah.
so it's like interesting to me because I just it bothers me. I just don't understand why people can't let people do their thing. And then meanwhile, if you live in a country that has a law and a person's breaking the law, it doesn't matter if the religion told them they can or can't. Like that's fine. Just have a problem with that. So that's enough about that, though. You answered everything I would want to ask. But I think it does segue into the question we always ask every guest, which is, what do you think happens when you die? So I'm curious, what do you think happens when you die? And when you were younger and practicing Mormon, did you like have to change that opinion, or is it still the same?
Um, yeah, I did have to change that opinion. I mean, because Mormonism is basically like the idea is that you continue on basically the same as you are now, or the same. I mean, you're a more evolved person though, right? So you go into a certain level of heaven, and you can be with your family in the afterlife as long as you've been sealed in the temple and all that kind of stuff. So what I believe now is I guess it's very open. Like I think that I the best way I can explain what I believe now is I think that we just we go on in some form. Like I think there's something with our energy, something with the soul, something to do with who we are that isn't just lost when we die. But I don't know what that means. I don't know if it means like I will end up in the other life like being me, or if that means my energy just like gets dissipated somehow or gets reorganized. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I do. So I think there's something after, but I'm not sure what form that takes. So
And I've never asked anyone this, but I want to ask you because you have a son. Like when you feel your own child in a womb, do you feel like there's someone else with you, or do you feel like it's you and then at some point it's not you? Do you understand what I'm trying to ask?
yeah. Um. That's interesting. Um. Can you hear him screaming in the
Yeah,
background?
but it's perfect. It's the best time ever to have that.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I mean, I feel like at the beginning I didn't really feel like it was a different. I don't know. It's almost like it's hard to believe that you're pregnant at the beginning, right? Like
Uh-huh.
it's almost like like I don't know, you feel pretty much the same. And then the nausea starts kicking in and stuff, and then it's like, oh. Um but yeah, I feel like there's a certain point where, you feel the baby move and stuff, and where it feels like it's, like,
Yeah.
oh, this is different, but or like, yeah, there's a being in there, there's
Well, yeah.
but yeah,
That's why I'm
I don't know
asking.
if that
Yeah.
answers your question, but
Well, I don't think
um
anyone could answer my question because I'm a man trying to ask a woman like a question that I'll never, you know what I mean? Like it's too hard for me on too many layers. But I think the reason I thought to ask it is we're talking about energy and we're talking about where does the energy go? And I'm kind of thinking in reverse. Like, yeah, it's interesting because the biggest miracle to me, all three times I've seen a child born, was like, how? Like, it's just like, what is in this that makes it, separate? Like, it's like, it really is a miracle. It's not a miracle that the child grows inside of you in gestation and all that. To me, the miracle is that it comes out and it's distinctly, uniquely it, and it's not like a different it, and it like really is already alive. Like it is 100% like, and I was about to go dark and say even if like blah blah, but it doesn't matter. Like it, when you see that. And so the reason I'm asking is like, I think there's something in your answer that made me want to ask that. Like I think you're actually onto something that
Yeah, it's weird because it's hard to describe, I think, when you are pregnant because there's a lot of things going on, right? Like with
Yeah.
your hormones with so I don't know if there's really a I mean there's definitely some women that I've talked to that have said that they feel the spirit, right, of
Mhm.
their child. But I'm not sure that I've felt I mean, I don't know, that I felt like I was in a different zone, sort of, I guess, quote, spiritually, but it was sort of, yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that actually.
Yeah.
I just don't know. Yeah.
No, it's cool. I'm glad I asked
But
though. Okay, and then I want to switch to one last topic just because so audience, please bear with me. I have read one of your entire fiction novels and I loved it. It's literally one of my favorite reads. Definitely my favorite read of 2025. Like literally my favorite book I read that year, and I read like 45 books last year because I started reading
wow,
again.
thank you.
Yeah, and it's amazing. It's not out yet, everyone. Ha ha ha, sorry. So but and now I'm reading because we're in a writing group. Your second novel, which is equally fantastic, and it's still in like its rawest form. So I cannot wait for it to actually be done. But the thing that you have in common in both is you have a very dark sense of humor. You have like my perfect dark sense of humor. Like I literally like it's my favorite thing to laugh, but also be like, oh, this is so sad. So I'm just curious, like were you born with this or is this something that came out of like the SEC DOJ stuff like how do you explain because based on this interview I think but I purposely waited to say this I don't think anyone watching this interview would be like oh she writes dark humor like I just
Right.
I just don't think you come across that way so I'm curious like where do you trace it back to.
Um that's a good question. Um I think well yeah, I mean I think the SEC stuff and all that kind of made me more, I guess cynical.
Well,
But
and I
sorry,
wouldn't
go
call it
ahead.
cynical. No, because I'm
Yeah.
actually like I wouldn't call it cynical. It's like you actually see the same thing I see that's funny, and a lot of people don't see that. But if you point it out, they will laugh. And so it's like I even said this to you once. I said whenever we're sitting in like a large group, I can now know that you're like observing like really funny things and like you're sitting there smiling and you're very polite and attentive, but like because I've read your novels, I know that you're like you're observing because you can't write what you write without observing it first. So I wouldn't call
Yeah.
it cynical though. Like personally, I'm just
Yeah, no, I don't know if okay, so I was just trying to think where I think I've always kind of had it in a way because I just think of like I've always tried to find the edge, like try to find like the interest in things. And so um like okay, so for example, when I was in the Mormon church, right? I would teach like Sunday school. So I taught Sunday school and I just felt like the lessons were so boring. They were just so um like surfacey and they would want you to whatever. I mean, like it was good, right? Like you to talk about forgiveness or whatever else, but I would just try to find like a way to look at it that was like would kind of create a little bit of controversy because it was so much more interesting, right? So like bringing up like like I remember one thing I brought up about the Sabbath day, like about keeping it holy, and then I like had a quote in there from Madonna and like all this stuff, and so it caused all these ladies to start talking like really fiery and and I just found it so much more interesting than like the Sunday school answers of you should keep the Sabbath day holy and make sure you pray, and because then you find out what people really feel and what they really because I think people just present a different version of themselves, like unless they really really know you, and even then there's this private version, and I think I just think it's a lot more interesting. So yeah, so in my writing and everything, I try to like there's that part that you present to other people, but then there's also that hidden part that I feel like um I don't know that I just feel like there's so many quirky things that people have, so many sort of like quirky little secrets that are just interesting and that they don't necessarily like I don't know, I just find it more interesting than talking about where you got your latest throw pillows or whatever else
yeah.
I just find it I don't know, so
No, it's cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
so there
No,
you
it's a
go.
good it's a good
Yeah.
answer. Definitely fulfilled where my curiosity. Yeah, because it's just you're profoundly good at it. Like you're like at the next level. I tell you this all the time, but if we lived 25 years ago, you would have penned a bestseller. I don't know if anything sells anymore, so that's the only reason I phrase it that way.
I know.
Yeah, but but actually, it's a cruel compliment because I've been told it before too. Like, gosh, if you turn that into a script for TV, I'm sure it would make a great 10-part series on Netflix, but just to make sure you understand my compliment. No. It's actually reading your novel that is amazing. It's not just your ideas. It's like the way you construct the sentences. So, all right. Well, I think that I've exhausted all the questions I have for you, but we always give our guests the floor at the end of the interview. Is there anything you want to tell our audience besides how to find you, which will be in the notes?
Yeah. What do I want to say? I don't know. I just want to say thank you very much. I also on the legacy side of things, I do want to say, like, for a lot of people, it doesn't have to be a big thing. Like, it doesn't, you don't have to create this big package or whatever. But I do think that you should think about that when at any point in your kids' lives, or any of your heirs, right? Like, I mean, you don't even have to have kids. Anyone that you want to pass things on to, it doesn't have to be like a lot of people think that they don't have really anything to pass on. Like, people won't be interested in their stories. They won't be interested in their values or whatever else. And I think you'd be surprised at how interested your kids or your heirs are in things like that. And just even, I don't know, weird things about, like I used to listen to CDs or whatever, like what's a CD, I mean, just sort of things about your life. I think when you are connected with someone like your kids or whatever else, your stories have a lot of impact. And especially, like, we're talking a lot about resilience and things like that. When you talk about the hard times and you talk about how you came through them, and it shows that, like, hey, mom could go through that or dad could go through that. I'm having a hard time, but they made it through. I can make it through. It just gives them a lot of strength. And so I think, whatever you put together, if it's just like a letter, if it's a journal, or, something huge like a memoir, it doesn't have to be huge though. But I think just whatever you can put together, you should. Because I think your family is just really going to benefit from it. And so that's it for my legacy stuff.
That's awesome. No, that's great. And I don't think enough people think about that. And I think it's especially important for people to understand that it's not just about your children. Your friends do want to know. And like I lost a friend when I was in my 30s, and I would have killed for him to have written some sort of memoir or a letter to all of us. And luckily he knew he was dying, so I got to talk to him a lot, but it's still, what you're saying is definitely not lost on me. So thank you again, Laura. You're incredible. Thank you for opening up. Thanks for talking about all the DOJ stuff. I would be scared to talk about anything like that on an interview, so I really do appreciate it. And to everyone at home, if you want to support the show, just head over to MikeyUp.com. That's MIKEYOPP.com. And as always, we will have the notes section for how to find Laura. But again, it's LauraRoser.com. And you have been listening or watching Coffin Talk. And my name is Mike Oppenheim, and we will see you soon.